So in the last topic, we explored the persecutor role as well as some of the unhealthy ego behaviors that support it. And we also provided you with some ways that you can step away from this persecutor role. Now, I feel this also highlights the importance of emotional agility. You know, when we are not working with our emotions and we're hiding them under the carpet, the one way that we can trip over that carpet or that volcano of emotions can explode is when we project it onto other people around us. You know, blaming, I think it was Brené Brown who said, blame is the discharge of pain and discomfort. And I feel once we start working with emotional agility by doing more accepting of our emotions, then there's a lot less projecting of these emotions, and therefore we are less likely to step into this persecutor role. Now, in this topic, I would like to explore the role of the rescuer in greater depth, as we did for the persecutor. You know, what are the rescue behaviors and their payoffs, and how can we stop becoming the rescuer? Well, the rescuer is generally perceived as the good guy or good girl in the drama game. Whilst this role does not encompass righteous indignation, there is still a level of self-righteousness prevalent in this role, which serves the rescuer's ego needs to feel competent and self-important. Now, you may ask, what is wrong with being a rescuer? Surely it's helping the victim? Well, there is a classic proverb: give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. This is what I feel differentiates a person who is a rescuer versus someone genuinely doing good in this world. It's the difference between feeding the person the fish or teaching the person how to fish. In other words, enabling the victim to stay where they are or empowering the victim to break free of their victim consciousness. Now, the rescuer normally works with the former, where they enable the victim to stay where they are. The rescuer feeds the fish to the victim, and they do so reluctantly. But they feel this guilty obligation to do so. They either do whatever needs to be done for the victim, or they give advice without being asked on what should or should not be done by the victim. Usually the victim doesn't want to be helped in any case. They would rather stay in the game as victim, and you will see why in the next topic. Now, the rescuer will also give the impression that they are self-sacrificing themselves for the victim, being a martyr, reinforcing the need-obligate system. Now that I have helped you, I subconsciously expect something in return. The subconscious payoff behind the rescuer's unsolicited actions is to feel superior, that I'm good, you're not so good feeling. Now, what does happen is that the rescuer's attempt to help the victim usually fail in some major way, especially since the victim is not really interested in being rescued. As the rescuer fails, the victim is then justified in getting angry at the rescuer, turning the rescuer into the victim who now says, "But I was only trying to help," as the victim now becomes the persecutor, blaming the old rescuer, now victim, for his or her failings. For example, Mary's boyfriend John breaks up with her. This is not the first time it's happened. Mary goes to her friend Lisa again in tears and tells her what has happened. Lisa then proceeds to tell Mary that she always thought John was no good for Mary and reminds her that he keeps breaking up with her. She tells Mary to block all contact with John, insisting that she must not go back to him again if he asks her back. Mary agrees, even though deep down she knows she will still go back to John if he asks her back, because she really loves him. A few days later, Lisa bumps into Mary and John at the coffee shop. She notices that they are holding hands and laughing. Well, Lisa greets them, but Mary gives Lisa a cold greeting and turns her back on her and continues talking to John, who ignored Lisa outright. Lisa is of course upset and leaves the coffee shop, saying to herself, "How could she be so unkind to me after all I've done for her? After all, I was only trying to help." Now, being a rescuer turns us into people pleasers, and we end up spending our much valued energy solving other people's problems for them, whilst neglecting areas of our own life that needs attention. Maybe rescuing others makes us feel our life is not so bad in comparison, and therefore we do not need to address our own stuff. This rescuer role distracts us and our energy from focusing on what is important in our own lives. And as we are too busy fixing other people's problems, we tend to avoid taking accountability for our own well-being when we are required to do so. Now, the rescuer mindset in any relationship, at work or home, is also the breeding ground for codependency between the changing victim and rescuer roles. There is this over-reliance on each other for each other's well-being. And this is why it is so important for us to step out of this rescuer role. So how can we step away from it? Well, firstly, as a rescuer, begin to develop boundaries, especially if you are taking on too many responsibilities managing other people's problems. You may be criticized for this by others. You might even be blamed for not caring. But remind yourself, you are not responsible for everyone else's choices and decisions that they make, and that each and every one of us is accountable for our own choices on our own respective personal journeys. Now, secondly, notice the inauthentic guilt that urges you to become the rescuer. This is guilt we feel for saying no. Inauthentic guilt is different from direct guilt. Direct guilt is where we cause the person actual harm, and the feeling of guilt that ensues is really an indication that we regret what we did and we would like to make it right. Now, when we say no and create a boundary, we are not actually harming anyone else, and therefore any guilt we feel is pretty much inauthentic. So ask yourself, why should you feel guilty for setting healthy boundaries for yourself? Now, thirdly, notice the inner voice. You'll recall from the inner voice exercises, the rescuer voice, which tells you it is your responsibility to fix other people's problems for them, and uses this inauthentic guilt to urge you to become the rescuer. Do your best to detach from this inner voice, working with those exercises, and become the observer. Observe the urge and let go. Fourthly, as a rescuer, reflect on what you're avoiding yourself. Why are you distracting yourself from your own problems and focusing on others instead? Last but not least, if you really want to help the other person, ask yourself if you are enabling the victim to stay the victim or making it possible for them to grow. This is where you do not offer help without being asked by the other person. You can ask them, what is it you would like me to do and how? In most cases, the other person will not know how to answer and may just want to talk. If you are asked to do something, you can then assist. But be mindful not to solve the problem for the person. Instead, ask the other person what solutions they have for their problem and let them know you will be happy to sound them out. In this manner, you show compassion, but you are not taking their problem onto your shoulders. If they do not have a solution, you can then ask them to go and think about it and then possibly share their solutions with you later if they wish to. Now, in the workplace, this is an ideal approach if a team member goes to his or her manager with a problem. The manager might take on the habit of solving the problems for his team, but instead the manager should ask, what do you think is the solution? If they do not know, tell them to go away and come back with some ideas to share. The manager can of course always guide them, but not take on the problem-solving process personally. This empowers the team member to learn and grow. Remember, when you are rescuing others, you are sending them the implied message that they are incapable of handling the matter themselves. Now, in the next topic, we will explore the victim role as well as victim consciousness or a victim mindset that supports this role. And also you'll see why being the victim is the most prized position on this drama game board. Now, as we finish off, I leave you with a wonderful quote by Lao Tzu. Care about what other people think, and you will always be their prisoner. So until I see you in the next topic, take care and stay aware.